All right, everyone, welcome back to the Abundance Formula podcast. Whew, this last month has been a doozy. I honestly took a few weeks off from the podcast just to have some more self-care time. Just things have really grown in our business lately, which has been awesome. But when that happens, like, and you get to a next level in business, your schedule gets busier and you almost have to rearrange things to try to figure out where things actually work because now you're busier and managing your energy. And I really wanted to come on here and make sure that I gave quality content and it wasn't just like super tired, came on to say I did kind of content. And honestly, everyone's just been sick this last month. I feel like I say that almost every time I come on. Like with our kids, I'm just like, and somebody was sick. Oh, and somebody was sick. And I was sick. But man, is it real? Gosh, I'd love to hear from the parents out there whose kids are finally older. Like, does it ever get better as far as how much they get sick? I'm sure it will once they get a little older and they're not just like little and little kids. Malia does really good about washing her hands at school and at home and all of that stuff, but still little kids are always kind of in each other's faces when they're playing their games and things. And so I don't know, but gosh, I mean, like literally this past month we got the first week of the month we got pretty severe cold. Malia and I, it just stayed at a cold, but for Sailor, which is our 2.5 year old, and my mother-in-law and my husband, they all got pneumonia from it. So it's like the first week was like dealing with the bad cold. The next week was dealing with the pneumonia. And then the next week, we all got a stomach bug. That was lovely. And then the next week, so last week, Malia had this week, nobody has anything at the moment. So it's just been like, oh my word. So, but we're doing great. It's beautiful. It's really gotten so warm and awesome outside. Memorial Day weekend's coming up this weekend. I'm excited. It's supposed to be really warm. Hopefully we'll get some swimming in. Malia's last day of school is today, so that's exciting. She's going to have a little pre-K4 graduation. I can't believe that she's going to be in kindergarten this next year. We've got her school solidified. We're really excited about that. And Sailor will be going into pre-K in the fall. So it's just a lot of exciting things, even just in personally besides the sickness. But it's just been really busy and just that time of year, especially when you're a parent, like the end of the school year, like a lot happens, a lot of parties, a lot of field trips, a lot of stuff. So I just needed to take a few weeks to sort of just rest, take care of everybody and myself that was getting sick. I'm still in my show prep. My national level show, first one of the year is Junior Nationals, and it's June 22. So it's 4 weeks away. So I've still been in prep for that on top of everything else. So it's just been a lot of busyness. And I honestly I don't like to come on here and just do BS episodes. I want it to matter, frankly. So took a little break, which so many podcasters will do that. So many podcasters I realize even have seasons, like they do season 1, season 2, but I really don't. I miss the podcast whenever I take little hiatuses. So I never want to be like, oh, and then there's just season 1 and then we're off for X amount of time. If I feel like I need a little rejuvenation, I take a little moment and then I come back and we get going. So I'm honestly really excited about today's topic. I think it's going to really be a breakthrough mindset shift for a lot of you. I know it was for me. And I don't know, I think it's just going to get a lot of people permission to show up bigger and feel a little more at peace in your day-to-day life and the impact you're making. So, and I think that's huge for people because all we really want is to know that what we're doing here matters and all the effort that we're putting in is doing something that's helpful to the world or the people we at the very minimum care about, let alone everyone else. So yesterday I was doing my morning devotional and it's kind of set up where there's like a Bible verse and then there's like a short little read paragraph snippet about that, the author's thought on that, and then there's like a prompt. So this particular one, I have it here because I'm going to kind of reference a couple things, but so this particular one was kind of focusing on this verse that's in Ephesians 2:10, saying that we're Christ's workmanship, we're created to do good works, and that He's prepared them in advance for us, and this stuff. And so the author kind of talks about in her paragraph spends the time on saying, okay, so we're a custom creation. No one is like us. We're tailor-made. So we don't have to imitate or try to replicate anybody. We have our specific mission and the world needs what we have, our mind, gifts, personality, right? And I'm sure you've all heard people focus on this before. Okay. All of that. And then the start of the prompt, the first question was, Do you embrace your uniqueness? And I honestly just got to thinking about it. And so I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go ahead and proceed this convo today and tell you my stance on this might actually be a little polarizing. But hear me out though, because I think it's really going to be a breakthrough for you. I know it was for me sitting here yesterday, like thinking about this first prompt and just like launching into this topic. And my mind's never gone to this place before. So the question was, do you embrace your uniqueness? And I was sitting there thinking, like, I'm honestly don't feel I'm very unique, And but didn't take it in the negative sense. You know, like she says here, okay, we've got our, we are tailored. Technically, we are all unique. Technically, nobody has my exact eyes. Exactly. All the scientific minutia of my eyes. Nobody exactly has my voice. Nobody has, you know, my exact thought processes. Nobody has responded to the most perfect exactness of how I did to certain things in life, etc. But yet, in general, there are other people out there like me. Like I was trying to think of, well, what's unique about me? Well, maybe I'm uniquely patient in strenuous circumstances. I'm uniquely resilient to difficulties. I'm uniquely dedicated and determined. But then I'm like, but there's so many other people in the world that those are the things, right? That, and even in my own community. So I'm not really unique in that sense. So I was like trying to think about it, and I was like, really, unless you're just thinking to the minutia, we're not actually unique. However, the real question that we need to consider is, are we relevant? Now, going back to the uniqueness. So I don't think we are actually unique in the general sense, you know what I'm saying? But what is unique to us, and this is the breakthrough, what is unique to us is who God has intended for us to impact and who has been meant to be on our path, who we're meant to rub shoulders with, who we're meant to be impacted by, and who we're meant to impact. And this is a huge differentiation, honestly, because we can spend so much time trying to figure out how we're different, how we're special, and how we can stand out. But that's just a waste of our time, in my opinion. None of that actually matters because and this is just my personal belief, who we're meant to shepherd has always and will always be ours. Nobody else can take that from you. You can't lose it. It's predestined. Even like this verse says, like, again, she's focusing on our uniqueness. But in that verse, it says we're meant to do good works and he's prepared them in advance for us. And so I want to challenge you to say, no, like, okay, let's go ahead and stop this is people worrying about our uniqueness, our degree of nicheness is what holds a lot of people back from just getting out there and making an impact, getting out there and just doing something, getting out there and just showing up. And it's an excuse. It keeps people stuck. So although this might be polarizing to say, okay, no, we're not unique, but we are relevant. And so diving into the relevancy is this. We might feel like we're too small. We might feel like we're not big enough to do something that's ultimately relevant in the world. But that's not true. And I'm going to show you in a second. But it's a breakthrough concept to know that, like, who you meant to shepherd is always yours. That can't be taken. It removes this lack mentality and it takes off the pressure that somehow you're in control of all that. All we're meant to do is to show up, and we might not be unique in that all these rocks are getting thrown in this pond, but what is unique is the ripple effect that ours will have. And when you feel small and not like you can make a big impact, remember, like, every ripple starts with a teeny tiny ripple first and they expand out and they get bigger. So what the real question should be is, do you believe that you are relevant? And then if you're like, no, because I'm too small, I don't have a ton of money, I don't have some big career or whatever the thing is that makes you not feel big enough, I want you to remember that the ripples are always small and there is always a ripple effect from small to big. There's no ripple you've ever seen in the water that didn't grow to a big ripple. The difference is that 99% of the time we don't always get to see or know what that larger capacity impact and difference we made was. But scientifically, it's happening. Scientifically, it's proven that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, correct? But we don't always get to see that expanded play out through life. How our one little interaction, our one kind word to somebody, our one smile, our one podcast episode, whatever that thing was, we don't get to see then how that touched that one person in some way. That made them do some other little thing that changed their attitude in some little way, that changed how they spoke to somebody else, that went down the path and created so much difference. Or even a little just actions. Again, you think, oh, I got to take some really big action to make a big difference in this world. Even little things that aren't in our control too. Like if you couldn't find your keys, so you left for work 15 minutes later, that puts you on the road 15 minutes behind when you would have, behind a different vehicle, that put a different vehicle behind you, right? That 15 minutes could have put you, out of harm's way, or put somebody else out of harm's way. Like all of the things are connected. Everybody's story ultimately down the line is connected, which is really cool. And I'll share a little example story with you in a minute. So everything you do or don't do, whether consciously or subconsciously, is making something else happen on this chessboard of life. You are a piece on it and you have value. And the way that you move, although there might be other pawns, there might be other bishops, there might be other queens, right? It's important to the overarching plan that I believe God personally has, and he's the one in control of that board. And he knows how everything is going to work together for the good of those who love him and for the good of all. And so we're just part of that. And our only responsibility is to just be willing to show up from small to big and to keep moving. So here's an example of how it's so important for us to just show up and not be worried about how big we think we are, what level we think we're at, how much money we think we have, all the things, and how the little things actually do result in big things. Because every now and then, God does let us know, here's an affirmation. You're doing good. Keep showing up, right? So here's just an example from my life. That's pretty cool. So James Dixon was a guest I had on this podcast several episodes ago. If you missed it, make sure you check it out. James Dixon. He's an amputee that I met. Gosh, maybe it's 2 years ago now. I don't know now at this point. A little while ago at one of my practitioner conventions that I had to go to for CEUs, for continuing education. So I met him there. He was one of the speakers for one of the talks we had. And he was so good. And so I was like, I've got to connect with him and see if he'd want to come on the podcast. I love his story. I love his energy. He aligns with this podcast in abundance. I want to have him on. So he's super busy. He became super successful right after that. I met him right before like the big breakthrough moment before his book came out and all these cool things. So it was hard for us to coordinate schedules for a while. So it took us about a year for me to ultimately get him on, just to get our schedules to align. He came on the podcast. It was amazing. It was a great episode. It was super popular. Tons of people listened to it. And so maybe a week or two after the podcast released, I got a message from my old graduate school, my medical university that I went to, Loma Linda. It's a top 10 medical university. They messaged me and they said, wow, we listened to your podcast and we would like James Dixon's contact information because we'd like to hire him to speak for the school. And so I texted James and asked him if that was okay to relay his contact info, and he had said yes. So I did that. And then maybe a month later, I saw pictures on social media that he did, in fact, like they did hire him to go out there and speak, and he spoke and was seeing pictures from the event and all of that stuff. And so then I shot him a message and I said, hey, I'm so glad it worked out that you got to go. Did you enjoy the school? How was your experience? I'm glad that worked out for everybody. And so then he had said, yes, it was wonderful. He had an amazing time. And it was just, he just felt really called when he went there that he wanted to make a bigger difference. And so he actually decided to give $1,000 for a minority student to attend Loma Linda for free. And he thanked me for having him on the podcast and for making that connection between, him and Loma Linda so that he could be there to, make an impact for somebody. And that was just a moment for me of thinking, and it kind of came to my mind as I was thinking, looking through this wrestle of uniqueness and relevancy, and how nothing we do is too small, you guys. So this is what I want you to take from this story. I didn't have personally $100,000 to, and he's created this as also a future scholarship for people. So I didn't have $100,000 to sponsor somebody to go to medical school when they couldn't afford it, a top 10 medical university that they couldn't afford potentially. I would love to. That's where I want to be one day, is to be able to do things like that. But am I there now? No. But I got to be part of that. That part of my plan, that God's plan for me, was that I was a facilitator, right? I didn't get paid to come on and do that podcast. James wasn't paid to come on the podcast. It wasn't a big action that we did. We set aside an hour of our time. We came, we had a conversation, authentic, just wanting to help and serve and encourage people. We just put it out there into the world. Some of my podcasts get thousands of listens. Some of them get 10 listens. You never know what it's going to be. So we just put it out there. And little did we know, and did I know, sitting here, okay, I don't have 100K to help somebody at that level. But because I was just showing up my normal week to week, where I release a podcast episode a week and I'm interviewing people, and I've just felt the call to have him on, right? That was a ripple effect of the wider span that God let me see, to be like, hey, this is working. Hey, you're doing the right things. You're showing up. This is what you're supposed to do. And that was really cool, because again, I could have looked at it as like, I'm just this little ripple. I don't have $100,000 to help somebody like this. I didn't even know that was something that could happen from that. You know what I mean? Our brain just can't even think. Like, that's why it's important for us to not focus on why we're unique or special. Because frankly, biblically, God never used the people who looked uber special. Like he used the people that looked completely unconventional to be doing the thing that he called them to do. You guys always hear me saying this: God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. It's not about your uniqueness, it's about what he's planned for you and who he's planned for you. And so all you're meant to do is let go of all that pressure and just show up and let him handle how far the ripple effects are meant to go and what those things are meant to do, because we honestly can't think big enough, right? And that's one thing that's a new strategy of life, because I am such a planner that even in business, the explosion of our business this year has occurred because instead of me trying to strategize everything and project out all the things and where we should go and all the steps, I've I think I just made a post about it yesterday on Instagram. Like, I'm in my one step at a time era, to quote, the whole Taylor Swift thing going on now with the eras. So I'm in my one step at a time era. And that's where I'm not looking too far. I'm like, if I feel God's telling me to do and focus on this thing right now, that's what I'm focusing on day to day and week to week. And I'm not trying to project out too far, because I've realized I can't think big enough. So in trying to plan out too far and think of all the steps too far, how big I want this thing to go, I'm actually going to be, cutting myself short if I do that. Like I can't think above and beyond what he can. And so that's where it takes so much pressure off to stop trying to do that. We can know we want to do that, express the willingness to show up for that. And when it comes time for the bravery to step into things to do that, it does take bravery, but ultimately the outcome isn't something that's in our control. And that gives you guys so much freedom and permission to just show up small, show up in the small things, show up with the confidence to live big, but in doing small things. It doesn't have to be a big action. That podcast was a small action in the grand scheme of life. And yet it was the connector for somebody else's answered prayer. Somebody who felt called to go to medical school but could never afford it got their prayer answered. They don't know me. They didn't know James. And yet I got to be, and so did James, got to be a piece of this miracle. And so that's what I want y'all to realize, is you are relevant. You are connection pieces to these miracles and these answered prayers for people. You can be the spark plug to their belief in themselves, and now they go out and hit the microphone. Now they can go out and feel like they can do the thing. Like, you just never know what part you're playing. I know for me, there's people that, don't have any clue that just because they expressed a certain level of belief in my capacity, that was my trigger to just take things to the next level in my life. And that's why I'm at where I'm at right now. And that's why I've had 10K months. And that's where I've done these different things, because just one person said one small thing that made me feel like I'm not crazy. I might just be first. I'm not crazy, but I might be first. And they see it in me and they think I can do it. And so I'm going to go for it. Whatever. Those are small things, you guys. You don't have to do big things. You are relevant. Science says for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The difference is most of the time we just don't get to see the wider ripple, but it is happening. And that's what you need to know. Let go of worrying about being super unique, being super different, being super niche, all the things, and just show up in small ways that come to you, in big ways that come to you. Just show up, you guys. And, especially just in thinking about those of you who are on here in business or whatever, nonprofit. Another example, just think, okay, so I'm in the fitness industry. That's not unique. There's so many people in the fitness industry. There's a lot of people in the fitness industry who do things the way I do, who teach the kind of way I teach, have a similar mindset, personality, gifts, right? So that's not different. And so if I wasted all my time thinking, well, how can I show up as a different kind of fitness influencer? Then I would do nothing. I would never do anything because I don't think I'd ever find things to be different. Like most people say, like there's really rarely anything ever completely new invented. And somebody's done it in some capacity, in some way, and a different spin on it because yes, we are technically different in some ways or whatever. But what's different is who my work as a fitness influencer, who my work will come in contact with. There's people who I've worked with, clients of mine who've received transformation that just never would have crossed paths with so and so online or so and so in a different state. They just would never have come in contact with them. And so because I was putting my stuff out there, our paths crossed and they got their transformation. So you don't have to worry about competing with other people, even in a similar industry. That's why I've really expanded so much in the fitness industry, because back in the day, I used to feel like other fitness people were my competition, other trainers were my competition. And that's just not the case, because people will vibe with different people and be comfortable with different people. And I don't have to worry about somebody choosing them over me, because now I know, like, if they're meant to be mine, they'll be mine. And I didn't lose them to somebody else. They just were always meant to be theirs. Or the same thing with my fitness competitions. If I win the show, it's because it was mine to win, not because I took it from the other woman. Or if she wins, it's not because she took it from me or I lost. It was her show to win. And it was her opportunity. Like, so just as we have unique people we're meant to cross paths with, we also do have unique opportunities that God has intended for us, and it's not somebody else's. They can't take it, you can't lose it. And that just gives you so much more peace, which gives you so much more energy to put into just the showing up process. So I hope that's what this episode can do for you today, is release you from a stuck place, release you from this maybe a place of fearfulness, or just not feeling not worthy of or good enough to do anything big in the world. I want you to know that you are relevant, and I want you to work on strengthening your belief in your relevancy, and let that be freeing to you to know that no matter how small that action may be, it is doing a greater thing. You just may not get to see it. You do get to see it sometimes, which is fun and is encouraging and lights your fire again. But most of the time we don't. We just have to know it's happening. And we also have to remember, like, it's easy as humans to want this recognition on a greater scale. But if someone were to truly ask you, like, hey, you either can impact no one, or you could impact one person in a really deep way, or you could impact a lot of people, but only a little bit. Like, which would you choose? Like, at the end of the day, you wouldn't not show up if it just impacted one person. That matters. You'd be like, okay, if it could really make a difference in that person's life, I'll do it. So don't get stuck on how big you think the thing is. Promise you that little thing you're doing is growing to a massive capacity that's changing so many lives, and has created some chain reaction that you just don't get to see potentially, but it's definitely happening. So I hope that can encourage you guys today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If so, please share it. I love when you guys will like screen record the video or screen record the audio and share it in your stories. It's so fun for me to hear the snippets that stood out to you guys, because I may have favorite snippets of episodes, like not mine, I'm talking about just like other podcasts. I may have episodes that I'm like, oh, this part hit me, but then it could hit somebody else in a different place. And I think it's so cool as a host when you guys will tell me and message me which things stuck out to you. And that also helps me to know what little snippets to even share online as kind of teasers for the episode. It's just what's hitting people and what maybe future topics people want to hear about based on that. So love when you guys DM me and tell me your favorite parts or what hit you the most. And of course, when you share it in your stories, it's great because it helps other people hear about the podcast and know about it. So that's always really helpful. And again, spreads impact. That's what this podcast is for. So thank you guys so much for being here week to week. Thank you so much for caring, and catch you on the next episode. Have a great weekend with your holiday and your family.